Commander Vex floated in the bridge of his massive reconnaissance vessel, watching the third planet slowly rotate on his holographic display. The yellow star system had looked promising for expansion, but first glance suggested another boring, primitive world. "Cole, what's the status on that blue-green planet?" Vex asked, his three eyes focusing on the scanner readings. Scanner Officer Cole's tentacles danced across his control panel, pulling up detailed atmospheric data. "Commander, it's inhabited. Carbon-based life forms, recently developed nuclear capability. They call themselves humans." Vex's mandibles clicked in mild interest. Another species barely crawling out of their technological infancy. The Rillan Empire had catalogued thousands of these primitive worlds over the centuries. Most fell within days of first contact. Standard protocol, then, begin deep surveillance scans. I want population centers, military installations, and resource deposits mapped within the cycle. "Yes, Commander." Cole's scanner arrays hummed to life, invisible energy beams penetrating Earth's atmosphere to peer at the surface below. The first reports seemed typical. Humans had divided their planet into competing territorial groups. They fought constantly over resources, land, and ideological differences. Their weapons were crude but effective: chemical explosives, projectile launchers, and primitive aircraft. "Another warlike species," Vex muttered, already drafting the conquest report. "Mark them as suitable for subjugation and resource extraction." But as the hours passed, something strange began emerging from the data streams. Surveillance Officer Zara raised her crystalline head from her console, confusion rippling through her translucent features. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple high-yield explosive devices scattered across all major landmasses." "Nuclear weapons?" Vex asked. "Standard deterrent systems. Most primitive species develop them." "Sir, that's just it. These aren't deterrent systems. They've built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet several times over. And they're all pointed at each other." Vex paused his report preparation. That was unusual. Most species built defensive arsenals against external threats, not internal ones. "Continue monitoring. There must be some logical explanation." As the surveillance deepened, more peculiar patterns emerged. Human cities weren't just population centers. They were fortified complexes connected by vast underground networks. What appeared to be civilian manufacturing facilities could apparently switch to weapons production at a moment's notice. "Commander," Communications Specialist Dex called out, "I've been monitoring their broadcast signals. You need to see this." The main display flickered to life, showing human entertainment programs. Vex watched in growing bewilderment as humans engaged in simulated warfare for amusement. Their stories, games, and competitions all revolved around conflict, strategy, and combat. "Their training," whispered Navigator Finn. "Even their entertainment is military preparation." "Look at this," added Zara, highlighting new scanner data. "Their young offspring. They engage in organized combat simulations as recreational activity. Children as young as 5 years old participate in strategic warfare games." Vex felt his breathing chambers tighten. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a primitive species. This was a civilization that had accidentally weaponized itself. "Sir," Cole's voice carried an unmistakable tremor, "their educational institutions teach every citizen chemistry, physics, and engineering. By the time they reach adulthood, virtually every human possesses the theoretical knowledge to construct devastating weapons." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Vex studied the data flowing across his screens with growing unease. Human sporting events resembled military exercises. Their literature and media constantly explored warfare scenarios. Even their children's toys were miniature weapons and vehicles of war. "Commander," Tactical Analyst Ray spoke up, "I've been studying their global communication networks. They've developed systems capable of coordinating planetary-wide responses to threats within minutes. Any attack on one location would immediately alert their entire world." "Impossible," Vex replied, but his certainty was wavering. "No primitive species achieves that level of coordination." "Sir, they've already achieved it. They've connected every major population center through instantaneous communication. Their military doctrine appears based on the assumption that any conflict will immediately escalate to global warfare." Vex stared at the planet below, its peaceful blue-white appearance now seeming sinister. Every city was a potential military base, every human was a potential soldier. Every factory was a weapons manufacturer waiting to be activated. "What kind of species evolves like this?" he whispered. "One that expects to fight for its survival," Zara answered quietly. "Commander, I don't think they built all this for fighting each other. I think they built it because they're expecting something else, something from outside their world." The terrible realization hit Vex like a plasma burst. These humans hadn't created a civilization, they'd created a massive, planet-spanning war machine, and they'd done it instinctively, as if some deep genetic memory was preparing them for a threat they couldn't even name yet. "Cancel the subjugation protocols," Vex ordered, his voice barely steady. "Send word to High Command immediately. We found something unprecedented here." As his ship's long-range transmitters began broadcasting the urgent report back to Rillen space, Vex couldn't shake one terrifying thought. If humans had prepared this extensively for war, what exactly were they expecting to fight? Deep beneath the surface of Rillen Prime, in the Empire's most secure military analysis facility, strategist Nyx worked through her third sleepless cycle. The massive chamber hummed with the processing power of 1,000 quantum computers, all focused on understanding one small blue planet at the edge of known space. Holographic displays surrounded her workstation, each one showing different aspects of human civilization. The more she studied, the more disturbed she became. Nothing about Earth fit the standard patterns of primitive species. "Analysis complete on human military training protocols," announced her AI assistant, its voice echoing through the chamber. Nyx pulled up the data and immediately regretted it. She watched humans practice scenarios that would make hardened Rillen warriors sick. They simulated planetary bombardment, nuclear warfare, and extinction-level events as routine exercises. "By the void," she whispered, "they train their soldiers to fight after their entire world has been destroyed." The assessment chamber doors hissed open as General Thane entered, followed by Admiral Kex and War Analyst Vel. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space as they approached Nyx's workstation. "Strategist, we need your preliminary report, General," Thane commanded, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The High Command is growing impatient with this analysis." Nyx activated the central holographic projector, filling the air above them with a three-dimensional model of Earth. "Generals, what I'm about to show you challenges everything we know about primitive species development." The Earth model rotated slowly, revealing layers of data that made the military officers step back in surprise. Red lines connected every major city, showing underground tunnel systems that spanned continents. Manufacturing centers pulsed with energy indicators that revealed their true purpose. "These aren't civilian settlements," Nyx explained, highlighting major population centers. "Every human city is a fortified military complex designed to continue fighting even after surface devastation. They've built their entire civilization underground." Admiral Kex leaned forward, studying the tunnel networks. "Impossible. The engineering required for this would take centuries." "They've been building these systems for over 50 years, Nyx replied. "But here's what's truly unsettling. They call this emergency preparedness and disaster management. They don't even classify it as military infrastructure." General Thane's compound eyes focused on manufacturing indicators scattered across the planet. "What are those energy signatures?" "Civilian factories," Nyx said, bringing up detailed scans. "Or so they claim. Watch what happens when I simulate." Air crisis scenario. The holographic Earth transformed before their eyes. Peaceful manufacturing centers suddenly blazed with activity as production lines switched from civilian goods to military equipment. Automobile factories began producing armored vehicles. Electronics manufacturers started creating communication equipment and targeting systems. Even food processing plants revealed hidden capabilities for producing military rations and chemical supplies. Their entire industrial base can convert to wartime production within 72 hours, Nyx continued. "Every civilian facility is a potential weapons factory waiting to be activated." War Analyst Vel, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "You're telling us their entire planet is one massive, disguised military-industrial complex?" "That's exactly What I'm telling you, Nix replied grimly, but it gets worse. She pulled up educational data from human institutions. Look at their knowledge distribution system. Every human child attends mandatory educational facilities where they learn advanced chemistry, physics, mathematics, and engineering. By adulthood, their entire population possesses the theoretical knowledge necessary to construct sophisticated weapons. Surely that's standard education for technological species, General Thane protested. No, General. Most species separate military and civilian knowledge. Humans don't. They teach destructive capabilities to everyone as basic education. They've created a population where every citizen is a potential weapons engineer. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Kex studied the population distribution data, watching billions of red dots scattered across Earth's surface. Each dot represented a human with advanced technical knowledge. Their entertainment systems, Nix continued, constantly simulate warfare scenarios. Their competitive activities train strategic thinking and team coordination. Even their recreational games teach resource management, tactical planning, and combat skills. She brought up recordings of human sporting events, showing organized competitions that resembled military exercises. Basketball games that taught unit coordination, chess matches that developed strategic thinking, and video games that simulated complex warfare scenarios. They're unconsciously training their entire population for war, War Analyst Vel observed, his voice tight with concern. But here's what terrifies me most, Nix said, pulling up the final piece of data. Their global communication networks can coordinate planetary responses to threats within minutes. Any attack on Earth would immediately mobilize their entire world as a single military unit. The holographic display showed communication satellites, fiber optic networks, and wireless systems connecting every corner of the planet. Information could travel from one side of Earth to the other, faster than most species could launch their weapons. They've accidentally created the most distributed, resilient, and rapidly responsive military system we've ever encountered, Nix concluded. And they don't even realize it. General Thane stared at the rotating Earth model, watching data streams flow between cities like the nervous system of some vast organism. How many worlds has the Rillan Empire conquered, Admiral? Over 3,000, General. And how many were prepared for interstellar warfare before achieving spaceflight? The silence stretched uncomfortably before Admiral Kex answered. None. Sir, this is unprecedented. Nix deactivated the holographic displays, leaving them standing in the chamber's dim lighting. Generals, in my professional assessment, attempting to conquer Earth would not be a military campaign. It would be a fight for survival against an enemy that's been preparing for galactic warfare since before they knew the galaxy existed. General Thane stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser the Void Striker, studying the tactical display showing a small human settlement nestled in rolling green hills. The intelligence reports labeled it as New Haven, a peaceful farming community of barely 3,000 humans growing crops and raising livestock. Perfect target for our probe, Thane muttered to his tactical team. Remote location, minimal strategic value, small population. We'll demonstrate Rillan superiority, gather combat data, and withdraw before their primitive militaries can respond. Captain Locke nodded from his command station. Single cruiser should be more than sufficient, General. Their settlements show no significant defensive installations. Exactly what I want to hear, Thane replied. Begin the approach. Weapons to minimal power. We want survivors to spread word of our capabilities. The Void Striker descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek hull cutting through clouds as it approached the farming settlement. From space, New Haven looked exactly as described. Fields of grain, scattered farmhouses, and a small town center with what appeared to be civilian buildings. Initiating first strike, Weapons Officer Grix announced, targeting their communication center. Blue energy beams lanced down from the cruiser, striking what appeared to be a simple radio tower. The explosion lit up the morning sky, sending debris scattered across the settlement. That's when everything went wrong. The peaceful farmland erupted in response. Hidden weapon emplacements burst from concealed positions in barns, silos, and even underneath crop fields. Energy weapons and projectile launchers that had been disguised as farming equipment swiveled toward the Rillan cruiser. "Shields up!" Captain Locke shouted as defensive fire peppered their hull. Where did those weapons come from? "Sir, their entire settlement was a disguised military installation," Scanner Officer Yix reported, his voice filled with shock. "Those weren't barns. They were weapons bunkers. The farming equipment, it's all militarized." General Thane watched in disbelief as tractors transformed into mobile missile platforms, their harvesting arms revealing sophisticated targeting systems. What he'd thought were grain silos opened to reveal surface-to-air missile batteries. "Impossible," he breathed. "Intelligence said this was a civilian farming community." "It was, sir," Communications Officer Dex called out. "They're farmers, but they're also soldiers. Every civilian down there is fighting back." The battle intensified as more human defenders emerged from hidden positions. Children who should have been running for safety were instead coordinating supply lines. Elderly farmers operated advanced defensive systems with practiced efficiency, but then something happened that made General Thane's blood run cold. "Sir," Dex's voice carried absolute terror, "they're analyzing our weapons fire. I'm detecting scanning beams coming from the surface. They're studying our energy signatures in real time." "Scanning our weapons? During combat?" Thane demanded. "Yes, sir. And, sir, they're broadcasting the data. I'm detecting transmissions to every corner of their planet." Within 2 hours of the battle's start, the impossible occurred. Human defenders began firing back with modified versions of Rillan energy weapons. Crude but functional copies that they'd somehow reverse-engineered from battlefield debris. "How are they adapting our technology so quickly?" Captain Locke shouted. Over the sound of incoming fire, their educational system, Tactical Officer Ray realized. Every human has advanced technical training. They don't need military engineers. Every farmer down there understands the physics needed to copy our weapons. The situation deteriorated rapidly. What should have been a simple demonstration became a desperate fight for survival. Human reinforcements began arriving from surrounding areas, not military units but more civilians. Teachers arrived carrying improvised weapons that could punch through Rillan armor plating. Shopkeepers coordinated defensive strategies with military precision. Even human children were helping by running supplies and maintaining communication networks. "Sir, I'm detecting massive mobilization across their entire planet," Ray reported. "Every human settlement is responding. They're treating our single cruiser probe as a planetary invasion." "That's impossible," Thane protested. "We attacked one." Small settlement. How could their entire world respond so quickly? "Their communication networks, sir. They've connected every settlement on the planet. Our attack on this farming community has triggered a global military response." The tactical display showed the horrifying truth. Red indicators marked mobilizing human forces across every continent. Manufacturing centers were switching to weapons production. Transportation networks were redirecting to move military supplies. Even civilian aircraft were being converted for military use. "They're not treating this as a local skirmish," Ray continued. "They're responding as if we've declared war on their entire species." "General," Dex called out urgently, "I'm detecting launch signatures from multiple continents. They're launching spacecraft, primitive by our standards but armed. Through the Void Strikers' viewports, they watched as human spacecraft rose from launch facilities that hadn't existed in their intelligence reports. Converted civilian rockets, carrying improvised weapons systems, mining shuttles equipped with drilling lasers repurposed as weapons, even commercial satellites being repositioned as orbital defense platforms. "Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal," Captain Locke urged. "This probe has become a full-scale engagement." General Thane stared at the display showing Earth's response. In less than 72 hours, the humans had transformed their entire planet, from a collection of peaceful settlements into a unified war machine. Every nation had set aside their differences to face the alien threat. Every civilian had become a soldier. Every factory had become a weapons manufacturer. "Withdraw," Thane ordered quietly. "Get us out of their atmosphere." As the Void Striker limped away from Earth, its hull scarred by weapons that shouldn't have existed, General Thane realized they hadn't tested human defenses. They had awakened something that had been waiting for them all along. A species, that had spent centuries unconsciously preparing for exactly this moment. The test had revealed a terrifying truth. Earth wasn't a primitive world ready for conquest. It was a sleeping fortress that had just opened its eyes. The emergency council chamber aboard the flagship, Eternal Dominion, buzzed with tension as the Rillan fleet maintained a cautious distance from Earth's solar system. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the assembled officers' faces as they waited for the final analysis report. Analyst Jin stepped forward, her data pad trembling in her grip. Around her, holographic displays showed the battered remains of their probe. Fleet, ships that should have easily conquered a primitive world, now limping back with hull breaches and crews in medical bays. "Honored Council," Jin began, her voice barely steady, "our initial assessment was catastrophically wrong. Earth is not a planet defended by war machines. Earth itself is the war machine." Admiral Kai leaned forward in his command throne, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. "Explain yourself, analyst. One planet cannot be a weapon." Jin activated the central hologram, filling the chamber with a three-dimensional model of human civilization. Layer upon layer of data cascaded through the display, revealing patterns that made the assembled officers shift uncomfortably. "Observe. They're entertainment systems," Jin said, highlighting massive data streams flowing between human settlements. "While we create fiction for relaxation, humans create stories about survival, conflict, and warfare. Their children grow up consuming media about alien invasions, planetary destruction, and humanity fighting impossible odds." The hologram showed human entertainment facilities, massive complexes where they gathered to watch simulated battles. On enormous screens, video games where millions of humans practiced tactical combat scenarios, books and movies where Earth repeatedly faced extinction-level threats. "They're not just entertaining themselves," Science Officer Zek observed quietly. "They're training their population to think like soldiers." "Exactly," Jin replied. "Their competitive activities we dismissed as primitive sport. They're actually military training exercises. Watch this." The display shifted to show human sporting events. What the Rillan Empire had classified as simple physical contests revealed themselves as complex tactical simulations. Team sports that taught unit coordination, individual competitions that developed mental resilience, and strategic games that honed planning abilities. "Their Olympics," Jin continued, "brings together the finest specimens from across their planet to compete in events that mirror military skills: running, jumping, throwing projectiles, swimming, fighting, all disguised as peaceful competition." Commander Vox stood from his position, studying the data with growing alarm. "They're educational institutions. You're saying they're not just teaching knowledge?" "Sir, every human child attends mandatory training facilities they call schools," Jin replied, pulling up educational curriculum data. "They learn chemistry, which teaches them to create explosives, physics, which shows them how to build weapons, mathematics, which enables them to calculate trajectories and engineering requirements, history, which provides them with thousands of examples of military tactics and strategies." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. "Admiral," Kai's voice carried a tremor when he spoke, "you're telling us that every human civilian has received military-grade technical education. By age 18, every human possesses the theoretical knowledge to construct devastating weapons, coordinate complex operations, and adapt to military scenarios," Jin confirmed. "They've created a population where there are no true civilians, only soldiers who haven't been activated yet." General Tix, scarred from countless battles, studied the infrastructure displays with professional interest. "Their cities show me their urban planning." Jin highlighted human population centers, revealing the horrifying truth. Every human settlement is designed as a fortress. Underground networks connect buildings, allowing movement during bombardment. Manufacturing centers can switch production within hours. Transportation systems can rapidly deploy military supplies. They've built their entire civilization to survive and fight during planetary warfare. "But why?" Admiral Kai demanded. "They haven't faced interstellar threats before our arrival." "That's what disturbs me most," Jin replied, her voice dropping. to barely above a whisper. They've been preparing for threats they haven't encountered yet. Their entire culture is built around the expectation that something terrible is coming from space. The holographic display shifted to show human space programs, primitive by Rillan standards, but revealing in their focus. Telescopes constantly scanning the void for threats, space agencies with protocols for alien contact, military units specifically trained for extraterrestrial combat scenarios. They've been watching the stars for decades, Jin continued, not just for scientific curiosity, but as an early warning system. They expect invasion. They've always expected invasion. Science Officer Zek accessed additional data streams. Their fiction, their military planning, their infrastructure development, it all assumes they'll face superior alien technology. They've spent centuries preparing for enemies they've never met. Look at their nuclear arsenals, Jin added, highlighting weapon distribution across Earth. Enough firepower to destroy their planet multiple times over. Most species build such weapons for deterrence. Humans built them as a last resort. They're prepared to render their world uninhabitable rather than allow conquest. The council chamber's atmosphere grew heavy with the weight of revelation. Fleet Commander Vox spoke slowly. You're suggesting they've unconsciously prepared their entire civilization for galactic warfare? Not just prepared, sir, Jin replied. Optimized. Every aspect of human culture, from their entertainment to their education, from their architecture to their social structures, has been shaped by the subconscious knowledge that they're not alone in the universe. Admiral Kai stood, his movements deliberate and careful. Show me their deep space monitoring systems. The hologram revealed a network of observatories, radio telescopes, and scanning arrays pointed outward from Earth. Humans had been listening to space for decades, searching for signals, watching for movement in the void. They know something's out there, Jin whispered. They've always known. Their entire species has been preparing for contact since they developed the technology to look beyond their world. But preparing for what? General Tix asked. Jin pulled up the final piece of data. Human scientific projections about potential alien threats, military scenarios for invasion defense, and cultural references to ancient fears of beings from the stars. Sir, I believe they're not just preparing for invasion. They're preparing for something much worse, something their species remembers from deep evolutionary time, something that taught them to fear the dark between the stars. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The Rillan Empire, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, faced the terrifying realization that they had encountered a species that had been preparing for galactic war since before they knew the galaxy existed, and if humans had been preparing this intensively, what exactly were they expecting to fight? The massive command chamber aboard the Rillan flagship Eternal Dominion had never witnessed such a heated debate. Emperor Zen sat on his crystalline throne, watching his most trusted advisors argue over humanity's fate. The holographic displays around them showed Earth rotating peacefully, but everyone now knew that appearance was deeply deceiving. We should glass the entire planet, War Admiral Kex declared, slamming his armored fist on the tactical table. Before they spread their knowledge to other worlds, one orbital bombardment and the threat ends. Impossible, countered Intelligence Director Mira. Our scans show they've already established colonies on 17 different worlds. Their knowledge is distributed across multiple star systems. Destroying Earth would only anger them and prove we're the threat they've been preparing for. Emperor Zen studied the latest reports flowing across his personal display. Human colonies weren't just settlements. They were fortress worlds, each one designed to survive planetary assault. Worse, humans had shared their defensive technologies. With several alien species they'd contacted peacefully. Show me their colony worlds, Zen commanded. The central hologram shifted to display the human expansion zone. What they saw made the entire council fall silent. Every human settlement, from tiny mining outposts to major colony worlds, showed the same defensive patterns as Earth. Underground networks, disguised weapons facilities, and civilian populations, trained for warfare. They're not just colonizing, Science Advisor Jin observed quietly. They're creating a defensive network across known space. Emperor Zen leaned forward, studying the data more carefully. How many species have they contacted? 14 confirmed peaceful contacts, Mira replied. They've shared medical technology, engineering knowledge, and agricultural techniques. But, sir, they've also been teaching defensive strategies to every species they encounter. They're building alliances, Fleet Commander Vox realized, creating a galaxy-wide defensive network. The Emperor's advisors exchanged worried glances. The Rillan Empire ruled through superior technology and military might. If humans were teaching other species how to defend themselves effectively, the Empire's expansion would become much more difficult. There's another option, Emperor Zen said slowly. We could attempt to negotiate. The chamber erupted in shocked protests. War Admiral Keck stepped forward, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming under the command lights. Your Majesty, the Rillan Empire has never negotiated with primitive species. We conquer or we destroy. There is no third option. Perhaps it's time for a fourth option, Zen replied calmly. Survival. He activated the quantum communication array, sending a signal across space toward Earth. The message was simple but unprecedented, a request for diplomatic contact between the Rillan Empire and humanity. The response came within hours from President Hay of the United Earth Defense Council. Her image appeared in the holographic projector, a middle-aged human woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see right through the alien technology displaying her. Emperor Zen of the Rillan Empire, President Hay began, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. We've been expecting your call. You were expecting it, Zen asked, surprised. We've been monitoring your empire's expansion for over 30 years, she replied matter-of-factly. We knew eventually you'd reach our space. The only question was whether you'd come as conquerors or allies. The casual admission that humans had been watching the Rillan Empire sent chills through the command chamber. How long had Earth been observing them without their knowledge? We propose an alliance, Emperor Zen announced, the words feeling strange as he spoke them. Your species possesses defensive capabilities that could benefit the entire galaxy, President. Hay leaned back in her chair, studying the alien emperor through the quantum link. We accept your proposal, but with specific conditions. Name them. We'll share our defensive technologies and help protect your worlds from external threats. In return, you help us prepare for what's really coming. Emperor Zen felt his breathing. Chambers constrict. What do you mean by what's really coming? President Hay's expression grew grave. The things out there in the dark between stars, Emperor. The ones that make your empire look like children playing with toys. We've been preparing for them since we first looked up at the night sky and realized we weren't alone. The quantum communication array crackled with tension as the human president continued. Your empire conquered worlds for resources and territory. That's understandable. But there are things moving in the void beyond the galactic rim that view all organic life as an infestation to be cleansed. How you've detected threats beyond our galaxy? Science advisor Jin asked, her voice tight with concern. Our deep space monitoring networks have been tracking anomalous movements for decades, President Hai confirmed. Massive structures moving between galaxies. Energy signatures that dwarf anything we've seen from known civilizations. They're coming, Emperor. The only question is when. Emperor Zen exchanged glances with his advisors. If humans had been detecting threats that Rillan sensors had missed, their technological capabilities were far more advanced than anyone had realized. What are you proposing? Zen asked. A defensive alliance between all spacefaring species. President Hai replied. Humans, Rillans, and every other civilization willing to work together. We share our defensive technologies. You provide your fleet coordination experience, and together we prepare for what's coming. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Rillan Empire, accustomed to being the dominant galactic power, was being offered partnership by a species they'd intended to conquer. Why should we trust you? War Admiral Kex demanded. President Hay smiled grimly. Because, Admiral, when those things arrive from beyond the galactic rim, species boundaries won't matter. Empires won't matter. The only thing that will matter is whether organic life survives or gets extinguished. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the Rillan flagship. Deep space sensors, operating at maximum range, had detected something that made veteran space officers go pale with fear. Your Majesty, Communications Officer Dex reported, his voice barely steady. We're receiving automated distress signals from the Vegan system. All communications ceased 3 hours ago. The Vegan system housed 12 billion beings across 4 worlds. It had simply vanished from galactic communications. "Show me," Emperor Zen commanded. The holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the Vegan system. Where thriving worlds should have been, only empty space remained. No planets, no debris fields, no trace that a civilization had ever existed there. "They're here," President Hay said quietly through the quantum link. "Emperor Zen, the Rilan. Empire hadn't found a world to conquer when you discovered Earth. You found the galaxy's sleeping guardian, a species that had turned their entire existence into preparation for this moment." Emperor Zen stared at the empty space where the Vegan system had been, then back at the human president's determined face. "We accept your alliance, President Hay." "Welcome to humanity's war, Emperor," she replied. "Let's hope we've prepared." Enough. As the formal alliance was signed between species that had been enemies hours before, deep space sensors began detecting more movement in the void beyond the galactic rim. The real enemy was coming, and suddenly everyone was grateful that Earth's war machine factory was finally on their side. The end.